Ahoy, mateys, and welcome back to Captain Keaton. I am joined here today by none other than BioPhoenix to talk about his first Legend of Zelda game, A Link to the Past. Welcome back, BioPhoenix.
Hello everyone, and this is BioPhoenix here, and yes, everyone is happy that I did the intro. Okay, so,
Definitely.
yes, we're gonna be talking about Link to the Past, my very first Zelda game that I've ever played.
Dude, awesome. So there's a little joke going around. You've technically, well, not really, but in the BioPhoenix Captain Keaton lore, you've been on 4 times. So you won't know until to the Friday episode that we're recording, or that is supposed to go up at the time of this recording goes up, but this will be your 4th appearance. We'll put it that way.
Interesting, okay. I think I get it now.
So everybody else go back in time, but for BioPhoenix, who is here. Anyways, all right, I don't want to lose you on that. So welcome back, BioPhoenix. We had previously talked about your experience with Zelda 2 in the Zelda 2 interview. In hindsight, how do you feel about that interview and some of the ideas that were discussed?
I turned out pretty good. I thought it was, it was pretty fun to do it. I like talking about just, a lot of games like that, so I'm always happy to doing that with other people.
I really liked your recommendations for games that were similar to Zelda 2. Of course, the classic Bio Warrior Dan, and what was the other NES title?
I think I said Battle of Olympus was one. I think that
Yeah.
was one I mentioned.
Yeah, they both looked great. I was getting gameplay for them, and yeah, I hope to try them out someday. If I ever do a Zelda-like or Zelda-like likes, then I'll have to bring them up. But for everybody else at home, go check out the interview and check out BioPhoenix here on YouTube. Can you just talk to the viewers about what's going on over on your channel as of late?
Alright, so what I mainly do is that I cover a lot of obscure video games. I've like talking about them. I like seeing try to recommend them to people if I can sometimes. And then I do streams. I try doing them every week as much as I can. Usually on the weekends or on like a Friday usually are the best times for me. But yeah, so the streams are usually just fun, just like a hanging out kind of thing. Play a lot of variety of stuff on there.
Yeah, I think your
And I do
channel is
cover other many different things.
Oh, I apologize.
Oh no, I was just to say I just cover many other things like I've done a couple anime stuff. I've also do pickup videos, and I try to make them at least more discussion based rather than just being like, look at all this shit I've got.
Mm. Yeah, I think you do a good job at kind of discussing all the elements of all the things that you get, and you don't limit yourself to video games either, which I think is important. And I think your channel is kind of a good space to kind of discover like new things, like new games, new movies, new music, new books, and yeah, I always appreciate that about you.
Yeah, new old things, old things that you didn't know were a thing.
There we go.
That's what I like to put it.
Excellent. All right, well, so that you've heard it here first, folks, it's BioPhoenix. And we are going to go back in time, in fact, to an old thing you probably knew about, and definitely knew about. You're here, aren't you? The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past. So this was BioPhoenix's first Zelda video game, and I want to hear about it. So my first question for you, BioPhoenix. What was your first exposure to Link to the Past, and what was it like?
Alright, I did kind of go over it a little bit in the Zelda 2 video, but I'll go more about it here. So basically, my cousin gave us his Super Nintendo when he got it in 64, and he had, I think, 5, 6 games with it, and obviously The Link to the Past was one of them. And it was definitely the one game that me, my sister, and 2 of my neighborhood friends in the area that we spent all summer trying to like play through that game, and it was yeah, it was a very good time. I'll talk more about that in a little bit with the other questions there. But yeah, that was pretty much like my first exposure to it was because of one of my cousins like basically gave us a Super Nintendo with a bunch of games.
Dude, that's awesome. You're the third person I've interviewed who's been given the Super Nintendo and games along with it. Do you remember what some of those other games you got along with it were?
Oh yeah, I definitely do. Okay, so obviously there were Super Mario World, Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island, Mario All-Stars, so like three Mario games. And then there was Donkey Kong Country 1, and then there was also oh yeah, Mario Paint. And I remember it had like the mouse too, which was cool. That was another really fun one back then. And then probably like the one game I like barely touched was Stanley Cup hockey. It was a hockey game, and I remember the perspective of it was like very weird. But yeah, like that was like pretty much like the ones that I started out
As a Canada
with Link to the
staple,
Past.
get some hockey in
Yeah.
there. It's like a requisite. Dude, I can only imagine if like growing up I was just gifted a football game with like everything. Like here you go, you're American, so play a football game.
Yeah. Yeah, I know with the NES was kind of like that too, where like when I bought that NES, like when I talked about in the other video there, like there was like I think like two sport games that were in there, and of course like I only played them like a little bit just to be like, well, I have it, so might as well try them.
Hmm. You know, oddly enough, I probably played more hockey video games in my life than I have American sport games, I guess.
Yeah, like football and whatever. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There we go. So what was your relationship like with it then? You spent the summer trying to beat it with your family?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so there was one summer where cuz like we're done school and everything, so free time. And it was me, my sister, my two neighborhood friends, and I know every now and again one of my other cousins would come by and they would also were like kind of into it too. And yeah, then we did all just try to. So what we did all during that summer was that we went to the pool because we had like a neighbor, because the neighborhood that we were living in had like a pool, like a community pool. Go swimming for like maybe like 2 hours or whatever, and then come back, and then we just like spend the rest of that like time just like trying to like play Zelda and like to the past and try to figure things out. And we didn't have like a guide at the time, and we didn't have like internet. We did have a computer, but of course we didn't have like internet, so couldn't really look things up. And even if I did, like I didn't even knew that you could look things like that up on the computer. So yeah, oh yeah, so we yeah, we're just trying to play through the game and all the fun stuff, and of course like every like other day when we'd come back to it, we would always like try to like think about like different theories about certain things and stuff, and it was fun.
Dude, that's awesome. Uh, do you know how far you were able to get?
We actually did get to the turtle castle, which is like the I think it's like the like okay, if you look at like the numbers, I think it's like the eighth one in the Dark World. Is that right?
9, but yeah.
Oh, nine. Okay, not eight. That shows you how much I remember well, huh?
That's okay. You were close enough. And I think those numbers really just represent um where you can fly with the cuckoo. I don't think they represent dungeon numbers.
Oh, okay. I just always thought like that was like the order that you had to like do them in because that's how I did them.
It
But yeah, I
is
remember
the
we
last
got to the
one.
tur. Yeah,
Okay.
it's the one that's on like Death Mountain and beside like Ganon's like fortress basically. But
Right.
yeah, that castle. I remember when we got there, man. Like that was some hard stuff back then. Like just trying to be like, man, like there's like no floor. Like how you're supposed to like get across everywhere and like all the switches and oh man, it was hard stuff. And eventually, like after summer, like sometime after when we had to go back to school and whatever, I did like beat that, and then I beat the game and everything, and yeah. So yeah, we didn't end up doing it in the summer, but we got pretty damn close of doing it like throughout the whole summer.
That's awesome. So I assume maybe I'm wrong here, but were you born after Link to the Past?
Yeah, I was born in '93, and I think Zelda was '91 or '92.
Link to the Past was 91. I don't know if there's a difference in the American release date, but when did you play this? Was it like 95, 6?
I think it was '98, '99.
Was Ocarina out? Do you know?
Yeah, Ocarina was out at that point, but of course, like I didn't really know anything about it. I played Ocarina of Time. I think it was like 2000 or 2001. I think it was between those 2 years because I do know it was. I did play it after Ocarina, or I played Ocarina of Time after Link to the Past when I rented it because I did eventually get it in 64.
Right, that makes sense. Okay. So, how did you feel about this game then?
Well, I loved it. I mean, I thought it was just I loved like the set, like all the different like dungeons you get to go to. I loved the music in the game, man. Like I still like love like all the songs in this game. Like like the overworld theme in the Dark World is just so epic. The freaking the like some of the cave music is still is like so like creepy sounding. Like it almost sounds like something you'd hear in like a horror movie, and it's awesome. And then there
Dude,
was like the forest theme in the Dark World. That one was really great. And like the boss music, even the dungeon music in the Light World is also like really like kind of dark and sinister sounding too. It's kind of funny that like the dungeons in the Light World have like creepier music than the dungeons in the Dark World. It's kind of
I didn't think about
interesting.
that. Yeah, a little
Yeah.
bit. So, were you aware
Like,
then of the existence of like the PlayStation 1 and the N64 at that time? And if so, did they affect your like feelings on this game?
well, I knew about the PS1 before because it was like like my dad had it, but of course, like I didn't really like play on it all that much. I didn't really get around to like really like playing the PS1 until like maybe oh no, wait, no, I'm pretty sure I first played Link to the Past in '98. I'm pretty sure that would make more sense because I think '99 was when my dad got the PS1 and then I played that. Yeah, I think that I remember that right. See, this is what happens when you get old. You start your timeline starts to get all mixed up. Because I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be surprised if you looked at like one of my older videos in my collection videos said, "Oh, I got this game back in like '96," but I'm like I was like 3, like that would I don't know. I'm sure I probably got something wrong in those old videos, or maybe I got something wrong here. I don't know, but I do know like around that time, yeah, like I was definitely more playing like Super Nintendo than I was like PS1 and like N64. I got into that stuff a little bit on the later end, but that's what happens when your family doesn't have a lot of money.
Hmm. Okay. So let's go now into maybe more recent times. So I know you said that you beat it like after, like the year after or so, and you played it on your own. What has your relationship been like with Link to the Past since that time?
I've I've replayed it before. And ever since I have replayed it, I've still really like it. I mean, obviously, like it's like nostalgic, of course, but even without all the nostalgia stuff, I still think it's good. Like I still think it. Like I like the fact that there's like there's many different swords you can get in the game. All the unique items are cool. Like what was it? Like the fire rod. Like that was a cool like idea for a weapon, and the hammer even though the hammer is like really only used for like you doing the whack-a-mole things, but you can actually use it for like killing things too, which if you just want to like mix it up a bit.
Hmm. Do you have a
And
favorite
then I
item?
remember the favorite item, well, the hook shot is definitely one that I really like. The hook shot's always fun, just to be able to just like go around the places you couldn't get to normally. And the boomerang's always good, and Also, one item that I wish you could like use more often was the giant bomb, like the one that like follows you that you use to blow up the big hole there. It would have been cool if you could actually like use that like in like more places.
Dude, totally. You know, that's a concept that I think is explored more. Like, I think of Majora's Mask with like that giant powder keg.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
I think of Link to the Past when I think of a lot of future Zelda games. Like, you know, the Dark Portal. I mean, obviously, the most logical comparison, I guess, is Oracle of Ages, but lately I've been thinking about Twilight Princess and the idea of the Twilight
Yeah.
realm and the dark world. Like, I see some crossover there.
Yep, no, that's a good comparison, yeah.
So you've replayed it from time to time since then. Any standout replays?
Well, I haven't replayed it in a while, but I do know like the last like proper time I like replayed it, I think was like 2011, 2012. And yeah, I remember when I replayed it that at that time. Yeah, like I still really liked it and stuff. Like I can't really think of anything like specific. It was really I just really just wanted to replay just because it was like, man, like I love this game. I haven't played in a while. And yeah, that's all I gotta say. I know that's kind of a boring answer, but
No, it makes sense as far as when I think about your channel and like what do you do? Like you play a lot of like different games, you know? And maybe you're ready to answer this question, maybe you're not, but I kind of have one I want to throw in that's like a BioPhoenix exclusive here. And that's, you know, games that have reminded you of Link to the Past since then.
okay. I know one game I did find out about, and I also mentioned this in um another podcast episode I did there, and that is it's a Japan only game on Super Nintendo called Gunman Proof, or I think it's called like I think the full title is like Garuman Gunman Proof. You can just type in Gunman Proof SNES and it should pop up. But it's basically like it is a Zelda game, looks very similar to it, but you're like a cowboy and you use like guns instead of like swords. And like even like the heads up display kind of looks very similar. And just like with that game, you go around an overworld, you do dungeons and such, and it's a very chill game, very fun. It's not like overly difficult from what I remember playing of that game, but I do remember it being like really cool. Also the art style's like kind of like sort of reminds me of like Earthbound-ish. Like it has like the really thick outlines and look very cartoony-esque. But yeah, that game was really good. That's actually one I really want to play through like fully. But I did really like what I played of it though.
Dude, leave it to BioPhoenix to have the Zelda recommendation or Zelda like recommendations.
Yeah, that's one good one that usually I do kind of think of. So,
Dude, that's awesome. Any plans to replay this game?
um, probably not right now, but that's only because I just there's just so many other games like I really want to like check out. So that's just because of that. And even if there is a game I feel like replaying, I don't know if I feel like replaying this game right now. And that's not to say that like, oh, I don't like it. No, it's because like I got a lot of things to do. I wish there was more time in the day that we could spend more time with all these like classic games that we grew up with. And and like I said, like I do go back to a lot of like games I grew up with. I mean, come on, like I still go back and play like freaking Donkey Kong Country like every like couple months. So clearly I still do. It's just like with a Zelda game like that, like I have to do like dedicate a little bit more time with it as it's not a game I can like plow through in like an hour.
Yeah. Yeah, Donkey Kong Country fits that mold pretty nicely. I think that's got to be the most universally loved probably game from like the retro era. Based on like everyone I've talked to, it's like everyone was gifted Donkey Kong Country with Mario World and Link to the Past. And what's the game? I mean, maybe for some people it's Mario World, but for a lot of people, I feel like it's Donkey Kong Country.
Oh yeah, no, I'm definitely one of those people, and like I said earlier, like I grew up with with Mario World as well, and I loved it too. But there was something special about DKC though that really hit me different.
Yeah. Dude, that's awesome. And I mean, we compare it to Link to the Past. I mean, my average playthrough is like 6 or 7 hours. That's not 1 or 2 hours. You could beat Donkey Kong Country in like 1 or 2 quick streams. So
Yeah,
I'm
I've actually beaten it on one stream before. I have, and it
nice,
was
man.
fun. I don't mind doing it like all the time, just because it's a game that I can just plow through all the time. Whereas Zelda Link to the Past, like I do kind of have to dedicate more time with it, and plus, I'm not gonna lie, like as much as I love that game, sometimes I do forget like certain things. Like I know one thing I always forget to do. Well, of course, I guess I didn't forget it now, but it's the part where you need to get the book from the bookshelf and you gotta like run into it. I know sometimes when I have replayed the game, I always forget that it's like, oh yeah, I need that.
Yeah, because you find out, oh yeah, I do need that by the time you've already gotten to those tablets. Like for the second dungeon, like you need it. So the sequence is very specific.
Yeah, and there's a couple parts in the game too where you kind of do need to do that a little bit, but it's not like bad. It's just, it's just one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, shit, I forgot that you need to do that thing first.
We might as well talk about this. I don't know, and if you don't want to talk about it, we don't have to, but what I think this idea of like open world keeps coming up. Whether Zeldas are or are not open worlds. How do you define open world?
I define open world with just obviously the map has to be super huge, no like loading in between certain things. And I also think it has to have like a lot of like random side quests. And I don't just mean like like the usual stuff that you do in a Zelda game where it's like shit, I don't know how to like
Like a
describe
heart
it there.
piece
Fuck.
quest or
Okay.
something?
Yeah, it's not really so much like that. It's just more like you just talk to someone. It's like, oh, just here, like do this thing, and then you go back and you just get like loot out of it or whatever. That's usually what I think of usually. And then I also do think like also I know another thing too that's very common with a lot of open world games too is that a lot of them tend to try to have some sort of realism to it. Not all of them, but a lot of them do try though. Like most of like your very popular ones.
Does the linearity of like the story or the dungeon sequence matter to you in thinking about open world?
Oh yeah, usually in open world games you can do that type of stuff in like any order for the most part. In the Zelda game, like in this Zelda game, I would say like I think you can do certain ones out of order if I remember correctly, or at least you could do like as long as you get the main item from like one dungeon, you could literally just leave that dungeon and then just like do like another one if you wanted to. I believe you can do that, but I've never like really like tried.
Yeah. And then I mean to me that's kind of like not Skyrim where you could just go to any freaking town, maybe with the exception of like the Dark Brotherhood or something, I don't know, but Skyrim is basically just okay, you've made your character, go. And I'm sure Breath of the Wild's kind of like that too. I mean, I played a little bit of it, but I haven't played enough to really understand that. So I don't know. I mean, to me, like this is not that. Like it's very linear, very in its progression. Um, does it matter to you that the progression is pretty linear?
It kind of is. Yeah, I would say it is kind of. Like I was saying earlier, like there are parts where like you do have to like get a certain thing in order to progress, like to get into like a dungeon or to get like an item that you need to get to, you know, get to the dungeon, whatever. So yeah, there is a bit of that that kind of does make you have to like do things in the way it wants you to do it.
Does that matter to you? Do you care that Link to the Past is that way?
Nah, I like it like that. I think that's like a part of like of how the game was designed.
Yeah, I'm that way too. I sometimes prefer more of a tell me where to go and what to do.
Yeah, I mean there are some games that are better like that, and then some of them are better without that. It all just depends on like everything else like surrounding it kind of thing. And I think with Link to the Past, it's good like that. Like I
Mm,
wouldn't change it.
awesome. We can now kind of go into the masterpiece question, the master sword question, the masterpiece question. So at the time, Link to the Past was hailed as probably one of the greatest Super Nintendo games. I know I've talked about this before, but in Famitsu, they rated this game a 39 out of 40. It was the highest rated game at that time in Japan, with 3 reviewers giving it a perfect score of 10 and 1 giving it a 9. And even to this day, I feel like people still cling to that idea that this game is perfect, that it did no wrong and does no wrong. Where do you stand on the masterpiece question? Is Link to the Past a masterpiece today, and was it ever?
Yeah, I still love the game a lot. Like I still think it is like my favorite Zelda game, and yeah, maybe like it is a bit of bias that like yeah, it is my first, but you know, like I mean it made an impact on me, and the fact that it was a you know, the game was fun. Like yeah, like there were parts in it that were a little challenging, and yeah, like I said earlier about like how like the game like can get like can be difficult without like looking stuff up. But I mean, hey, the fact that I made it to like the freaking Turtle Castle without like you know without a freaking guide, I mean, come on, like that should be count for something. And I didn't have Nintendo Power either, so you know I still enjoyed the game a lot. So yeah, like I still really love it. I now, like, when it comes to, like, you know, games being, like, perfect or whatever, like, I also, like, just think that, you know, there is no such thing as a perfect game, but what does exist is that as long as if the game, you're, like, loving it and you're just, like, enjoying it as much as you can, I think that's really what matters more than it just being perfect. Because obviously, yeah, like, nothing is perfect, but as long as you get something out of it and you're like you know enjoying it the most of what you can get out of it, I think that's what matters more. But you know I mean hey, the fact that a lot of people also like love the hell out of it, I mean that's good.
That's true. I think that the public perception sort of dictates that question. And, you know, the complaints you would levy against this game seem pretty small, you know, by comparison. Um, are there any complaints that you have when it comes to Link to the Past?
uh I mean like I said, I'd really have to like nitpick on things, and even then like it's like I don't even know like what I could really like say about them. Like maybe maybe I wish there was more dungeons in like the light world. But at the same time, that would make the game like a bit longer though. So like, I don't know if I would want that.
Maybe more
But
of
I
a
mean, it would be
balance.
cool if there was more you could do in the light world, because it does seem like they spend most of it in the dark world. Which I mean, you know, I know that's like kind of the gimmick of the game is that you can go back between the two. But still though, like I don't know, that's like one thing I guess I could say that would be like interesting if they did add. But like any other like major complaints, like I do find the game, like, you know, comparing to what I was talking with Zelda 2, I think this game is way easier. Like, a lot easier. For sure.
Yeah, I mean, just the ability to put fairies in bottles makes it much easier.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't think it's really too easy though. Like, I mean, if you know what you're doing, then yeah. But I mean, if you're coming at this from a first time, like you don't know, there's like a couple challenging
Yeah.
bosses and some of the exploration, some of the concepts. If you don't know to put fairies in bottles, and
Well, yeah, like, when I first played the game as a kid, like, yeah, like, of course, like, you know, first time playing it, like, yeah, I did die a lot, but it wasn't like, you know, like, it wasn't like it was, like, bullshit hard, though. Like, I was actually able to, like, get far enough into the game, like, you know, where Zelda 2, like, it took me, like, forever just to get past, like, Death Mountain. Where in this game, like, yeah, I was able to get pretty far pretty quickly, even like on like my first time playing through it. Even
Right.
though yeah, like I said, it wasn't a perfect run, but I at least was able to like, I was able to at least like get pretty far into the game. It's like if I can compare this with something a little out there, it's like with Pokemon. Like that's a lot of people's first RPGs, and for a beginner friendly RPG, like it's a pretty easy game for the most part. Like at least if you were playing that versus like, like a later Final Fantasy game where like that's like much harder than a Pokemon game, I think.
Mm.
If you were first time playing like an RPG for the very first time ever.
Right. This is the Pokemon of Zelda.
Oh my god.
I don't know. Is it? Is this which Pokemon? The Pokemon Red, maybe?
Well, yeah, like I know in my experience, like with RPGs, like playing like the very first three RPGs I ever played was Final Fantasy One on NES. There was Dragon Warrior One also on NES, and then there was Pokemon Crystal and Game Boy Color. And out of those games, I did beat Dragon Warrior 1, but that was because, like, my copy of it literally came with the guide that literally told you everything. So, that was, like, I was able to get through that. And then I beat Pokemon Crystal. And then with All Fantasy 1, yeah, I couldn't beat that shit, dude. That shit was, like, way harder than, like, the other two.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
like, yeah, like the fact that I was able to beat Pokemon like easily versus like that, yeah, yeah, and that's kind of like how I feel about with Link to the Past, where with Link to the Past, I think was like way easier than Zelda 2 and even Zelda 1 as well. Zelda 1 took me a while to actually like beat.
I just want to say thank you for giving me the title and concept for this video. I'm now gonna milk the hell out of that.
Great, love it.
Okay, well, despite being easy, it is a pretty phenomenal game. Do you have any highlights or things that stand out to you or stood out to you from your playthroughs and experience with the game?
Okay, so I already did talk about a lot about like the music in this game. Like it's very very good. Like I just love it a whole lot. Very catchy stuff. But like one thing is that I like love one thing I haven't even talked about yet is the title sequence when you see the three Triforces come into one and then it does a do 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 do, and then the sword thing goes. I always like fucking love that intro a lot. Like I was just it always kind of got you like hyped and excited. And then oh man, like I remember what was it there? I remember okay, the one thing I do remember that was kind of funny was that I remember when we got to Death Mountain and there's that part where you go to the dark world real quick and you turn to a bunny and then the bunny is like you can't attack or like anything. I remember in the dungeon there on Death Mountain, you had to get the moon crystal or the moon pearl or whatever it's called, the one that like basically allows you to like actually survive in the dark world. I remember when we first got to the dark world, like we actually forgot to get that item, so we were literally on like the gold pyramid thing in the bunny, and I thought you had to literally like beat the game like that. Oh man, wouldn't that be like something?
Dude, that's so funny. That bunny scene is still like it's almost jarring. Like it's really cool that that's like a moment in the game.
It gets really weird, but it's kind of fascinating though, because I don't think in like other games you really saw stuff like that. I mean, I guess Majora's Mask is kind of like that, where you put the mask on, you transform into different things. But no, this one it's like you go to another world and you like literally like turn into a bunny and you're like you can't attack and you're like vulnerable and then everything else is like trippy. Like I don't know if you remember, but on Death Mountain, where when you first transform into that, like you see that dude that's like kicking like the pink guy that kind of looks like Kirby.
Yeah, to me, that's like your Twilight Realm thing, but it is also kind of Deku Shrub esque, because the Deku Shrub is kind of powerless in the beginning of Majora's Mask. The wolf is a little more capable, I guess we would say. But
Oh yeah, like the wolf can tear through what are the black creepy looking
I don't
things?
know,
I
those
forget what they're called right
faceless
now.
birds.
Yeah, the birds, but I'm also talking about like the
Oh
like I said, I
gosh.
don't know how to describe them, but like the figures that with that like they're like that have like the big claws and they have like the big like circle head, flat heads.
Yeah, they're like four-legged creatures, like these beasts, these shadow beasts, I guess for lack of a better term.
Yeah, they have an actual name to them, but I forget because it's been a hot minute.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good moment though. I like that you picked that.
Yeah, no, so that's one for sure that I definitely do remember. And then another one too that I can remember as well was that I remember when I found out that there is a dungeon like inside like the town in the Dark World, like the one that's underneath uh the center of the town there. What is it? The like the wind thing?
Hmm.
It's not a windmill, but it's like the northeast, southwest, the bird. Yeah, like I remember, like when I found out there was a dungeon like literally inside the town. I thought that was like kind of neat. I was just like, oh, there's like a dungeon inside the town. Like like kind of like what I mentioned with Zelda 2, where that there was also a dungeon inside the town in that one too. But of course, I didn't know about that one until like way later. But I remember with this one was when I first time I discovered that, and I thought it was kind of interesting that that there was a dungeon there the whole time, and yeah, it was kind of interesting.
What's Zelda 2's dungeon in a town?
The one where you had to put the one that I joked about with the where you had to play the spell, then it rises up from the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, that dungeon was in the town, wasn't it?
No, that's just to get the spell. But it is kind of like a
Oh,
tower.
okay, right. Sorry, my bad. See,
Nah,
I'm
it's
already
okay.
forgetting my shit, and like that was like what, like a couple months ago.
It's okay. I understand the confusion. Um, but I think that concept is kind of explored there. So that's interesting. And then obviously with Ocarina, you see that as well with like the well.
Yeah, yeah, yep. Hell, there's even like the shadow temples in the graveyard in that one,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
which is
yeah.
also like kind of interesting.
Getting that hook
I
shot,
don't know. I just
baby.
think it's kind of interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's just interesting that that a lot of Zelda games like they'll just be like just a town, and then like underneath the town is like this like danger of like bunch of dark stuff happening like, underneath that like nobody's like caught like aware of. I don't know. I just think there's like some like interesting dread there that kind of makes it cool.
Right. Yeah. There's like something like sinister about it. Like almost like this spiritual infestation of like your everyday life. Like that's pretty cool. Like I think there's a lot of unexplored mythology to Zelda.
Yeah, and I think like obviously the one in the Link to the Past is like it takes place in the Dark World only, but of course, it does reflect like what like like maybe there is like something in the light world that's like down there. Obviously there isn't, but it's kind of one of those things I did thought about as a kid.
Hmm. Dude, hell yeah. I kind of want to go to comparison contrast now at this point. So I have the comparison I want to make, and then if you have one, we can do that as well. But I'd like to compare contrast Link to the Past to all the other 2D Zeldas. Now I know this is your favorite, so obviously there'll be some bias here, and that's fine. But what do you think about Link to the Past versus every other 2D Zelda game? Is it the best 2D Zelda game?
I personally think it is, but like you said, a little bias there, I will admit. But I will say there are definitely some that have come close. Like I know from what I played of the 3DS one there, Link Between Worlds. That one I think honestly is like almost just as good in some ways. Yeah, so that one is really really good. And I really do like Link's Awakening because I like how like weird everything is in that one. Link to the Past has a lot of weird stuff in it too that I really like, but that one has like a different type of weird, which is still good. And then, yeah, I feel like another thing with Link to the Past, I will say, not just with the Zelda series, but I feel like there's a lot more games that kind of like took influence from this version of Zelda, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty important in the grand scheme of the rest of the series. Like there wouldn't be Link Between Worlds without Link to the Past, and even like the other ones that. Well, I guess Link's Awakening comes after this, but not by much. So, but I do think you still see the origins of things like puzzles in dungeons in Link's Awakening, and the item system.
Yeah.
So this is like the
But yeah,
template.
no, yeah, like I think like Link to the Past did do like a lot of like stuff right, and then there's a lot of things that kind of took inspiration from afterwards. Because I feel like like comparing with the first Zelda game, like like a lot of people have said, like it was more open. You can kind of go wherever you want, and the game didn't really tell you things flat out what you were supposed to do. Where this one like kind of like didn't do that. And because of that, I feel like a lot more people like started to make like their own games that were more kind of more like that.
Mm. Right. Yeah, I mean, there's perks to both. Like and Zelda one's openness is still within reason. There's an implied order, and you do kind of have to do a lot of things in that order. But it's not to say you can't. You can't go through dungeons. I mean, hell, your dungeons are numbered even when you go into them. So, but I do
Yeah,
think
though
that.
the thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, sorry, it was just that like in Zelda One, like you didn't really have like a total direction of where to go. You just kind of just went wherever, and eventually you would figure out that yeah, there is that you'd go to like different dungeon stuff because the map in that game was just a square that was gray. Where in Link to the Past, like you had a map and it actually like had icons and stuff. So that definitely made things like easier, like if you needed to know like where you're going and what to do.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, and the icons are very visible and tells you where to go. You can explore a lot of the map though without it. And there are points where it's stagnated, like when you first go in the dark world and you need the hammer to push down the blocks. Or I guess you need the bracelet in order to pick up like the big rock, maybe for the to
Yeah,
get
the
to the Death
magic eight
Mountain.
ball rock.
Mm-hmm. Dude, I
Yeah.
got stuck on that, forgetting that like you could pick that up with the standard bracelet. So on one playthrough, I was like, how do I get to the third dungeon? That was how.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, something else I just remembered that was a funny moment is that I remember like trying to get to Link's house in the Dark World. I was like, oh, I wonder what's gonna be there. And then it turns out it's like, oh, it's just like, isn't it like I think it's a store, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I always thought that was like kind of like interesting that like in the Dark World, Link's house is literally a store.
Dude, like the most important store too, the one that helps you get the silver arrow.
Yeah, yeah. So I always thought that was kind of interesting. It would have been, it would have been funny if Link's house in the Dark World was like an actual dungeon, and then the boss was Dark Link.
Dude, hell yeah.
That would have been funny, but yeah, yeah, they didn't do that though. But I mean, I would have been hyped for that though.
A little Banjo Tooie moment, Cloud Cuckoo Land with the Dark Mumbo.
Yep, 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 yep.
Where does Link Between Worlds and even like Link's Awakening fall short that Link to the Past kind of excels on?
Well, I think the originality of Link to the Past, with like I said, going from Light World to Dark World, I think was just really cool. It was something we just never seen before. So there's that. It was the first one to doing it, and then I would say the dungeons are more memorable in Link to the Past, I think. Because I'll be honest, like, now granted, like, I haven't played Link Between Worlds in a long time, but, like, and also, to be fair, too, I never actually, like, completed that game. I just, like, I played it for, like, a few hours, and I really like it a lot. But the thing is that, like, I don't really remember a lot of them right now. But, you know, I do plan on, like, actually, like, doing a whole playthrough of it at some point. Not sure when, but just from what I remember playing of it before, yeah, I'll be honest, I can tell you that I don't remember it, like, super, super well off the top of my head. And Link's Awakening, I do remember a few things about like some of the dungeons. Like obviously, you know, like the ones with like the Mario enemies, of course, you can't really forget that, but but yeah, and that's not to say that like the dungeons are not memorable. I just think that the ones in Zelda 2 or not Zelda 2, the ones in Link's or oh my god, I can't talk today. The ones in Link to the Past, there's too many links everywhere. Yeah, the ones in Link to the Past are like they really stand out to me more. Like I was saying earlier, the one in the Skull Forest, I always thought was like really awesome looking. I love the way how like you know like this you go through like the different like spines and like the rib cages and of course there's that like one like the fact that it has like multiple entrances I think is really cool too. Like you got like one that's in like a stump and then you got like an entrance to the dungeon where you fall through a hole and there's like the really cool looking one that looks like something right out of like Aliens with like the you know the one I'm talking about, right? The really like creepy looking entrance.
Oh, for the forest one?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to use the
It's the one where
flame
you need
rod.
the fire rod.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one. I always thought that entranceway was like so like awesome and creepy looking, and like I said, it looks like something out of Alien or like H.R. Giger kind of design.
Dude, and with that one, it's like you have to do something, and if you haven't played the game in a while, it's like, what do I do here? Oh yeah, I got to use the flame rod, the item I get in the dungeon. So I think that
Yeah,
perspective
and
is oh, go ahead, you first.
I was gonna say yeah, but yeah, I was just gonna say that yeah, there's a lot of like really cool, unique dungeons in that game that were like unlike anything else before. Like I was saying with the forest one, like I said, the one in the town was really cool. And then there's you know the turtle castle because you know it's a castle that's a turtle. Like I mean you know. And then of course there was Ganon's castle like on the Death Mountain was like kind of like rainbow colored with the shield or with the shield that's surrounding it. I always thought it was like, oh, it's a rave party. I know that's not like you know like the main feature of it, but I always thought it was like kind of like cool looking.
Listen, the canon now, the Ganon canon. Ganon's throwing a rave in the Dark World.
Yeah. Also, the Ice Palace in Link to the Past was cool looking as well. I will say.
I think that's an interesting perspective. Is that like this is just the most memorable 2D Zelda game. The other ones are good. They're not bad. It's just like, what do you think of when you think of moments in those games? And, in all fairness, I played Link Between Worlds once as well. But all I think about the gimmick, the wall gimmick. And it's cute and it
Yep.
has a good art style, but I don't associate any feelings with any dungeons in the same way that I do for Link to the Past. I love Oracle of Ages, and I can think of a couple characters. I can think of those like the Toki, the alien looking dudes that are like on an island. But I can't say like, I'm so wowed by much of that. I do think of the animal buddies, but not to the same extent with Link to the Past. You mentioned all these things. I'm like, yeah, like the forest entrances, the music, what that complements it, the dungeon in the town. I think of like I think it's Dungeon 6. I forget exactly what it is, but you have to use like the air ability that like dispels the lightning. And
Yep.
it's just such a striking moment. Even just starting off the game, like when you're starting in the house and your uncle pops out and charges off, Link, I'm going to save Zelda, and then you pop outside, it's all rainy, and that music is ominous, and you have soldiers who are like kind of egging you on. Man, what a striking game.
Yeah, that intro too. Like I know we didn't even like talk about it at all, but yeah, like that intro was like really, really, really good. Like it was kind of cool just to see that like someone else like related to Link is actually like trying to like do something, and then it turns out he doesn't get very far, and then you have to like take over for him. I always thought that was like a cool like intro.
Yeah, that's like another Link, right? Your uncle. Like it's cool. It's cool to see that because I think you get the sword from him, and I forget what else. If there's anything else you need, like garments or something. But I didn't grow up with Link to the Past first. I had it on GBA, but my memories with it are not very strong compared to like Ocarina. And Ocarina, you just start in a hut, and with a fairy. I guess your fairy is like your kind of closest you have to like
Yeah,
companion or something.
everyone's favorite fairy, right?
Not that the list is that great, but yeah, you don't have like a family member, so that's pretty cool. It almost harkens back to like the old games in a sense. Like you start in a cave with an old man. Like this is your old man, literally.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that as well. We can now kind of get into recommendations. So, do you recommend Link to the Past to newcomers? If so, who?
I would say yes. Like any like I know like I was talking when in the Zelda 2 episode, I was saying how that game like would be harder to recommend because of the difficulty. This one, yeah, I think this one is a lot easier. Like the fact that I was able to get as far as I did as a kid, like even before reaching 10 years old, I'm pretty sure other people that are like also around that age probably could too. And hell, they could probably even get farther because they got like the internet. So, yeah, definitely. And like we've been saying, like there's just so much like good things to say about the game. Like with all like the cool stuff, and the graphics are still really nice looking. I still really like that a lot. Okay, yeah, actually, you know what? You know what's one criticism I do have the game, although, like I said, not major at all, but I do think Link's sprite isn't my favorite looking sprite. Like, it's not a bad sprite, but I don't know, it's just not my favorite looking when it comes to, like, 2D Zelda, like, sprites. Like, the main character sprite isn't, like, my favorite looking. That's not to say it's bad, though.
It's just different. It's because it's the first one that is like in that 16-bit style. So he's a little more chubbier and kind of like the feet kind of frolic. When he's running around.
Yeah, like, he kind of looks like a hobbit.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I guess maybe that's what it was like, slightly inspired by. I don't know, what did Miyamoto, did he ever read Lord of the Rings? I don't know.
Yeah, he read it on his walk into the forest in his backyard. I'm making that
Yeah.
up. Do not quote me on that. But
Yeah,
in
I know
my
you're just joking
process
around.
of logic and deduction, Miyamoto's a Tolkien fan. Do you think he likes Game of Thrones?
I don't know about that one, but I can see him reading like Tolkien though. I mean, I think a
Yeah.
lot of people like. I mean, how old is Miyamoto now? He was born in like the 40s, wasn't he?
That might be too young or too old, too young. No, I think he's like 70s. I want to say not for when he was born, but his age, because I feel like he was pretty young at Nintendo when they were in the like NES era.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, because if he was like born around like 40s, 50s, around like yeah, like he probably would have. I don't know how big Lord of the Rings is in Japan, but given how like widespread Lord of the Rings is, I would imagine it probably does have a following over there,
Mm,
and I'm sure a lot of people at that time did read it.
right. Yeah, interesting. I'll have to do some research.
I don't know, it's just one of those. Yeah, it's just one of those random things that just came to my head. I'm like, did he ever read that?
Oh yeah. So you think like kids today would appreciate Link to the Past then?
Yeah, I definitely think they would. Like I said, like I still think it holds up. There's nothing like super dated about it when it comes to like, exploration. Like it doesn't have like okay, like for an example, like you're not like it's not like a text-based game or it's not like a point and click where I know a lot of those kind of games like are a little harder to recommend to a lot of newer people because, a lot of those types of games are, very old school and lots of like, there's a very specific market for that, where with a game like Link to the Past, where you can just freely roam around, swing your sword. You don't. It's not like Highlight or the East games where you like bump into like you attack by just running into the enemies or anything. Which I know that's another style of gameplay that I know some people are not a fan of, and some people are. But yeah, with this game, yeah, I still think it is very accessible, especially like there's also like so many ways you can play it now. Like, you got like the original, you got GBA, you got, like, well, Wii and Wii U's Virtual Console, even though you can't really buy them on there anymore, but you were able to then, switch online, and then of course, emulation and all that fun stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, many ways to play, so find a way today. Excellent. All right, BioPhoenix, thank you for joining to talk about Legend of Zelda Link to the Past. Any final thoughts on the game as we wrap up here?
Yeah, I just want to say that it will always forever be like one of my top favorite Super Nintendo games. Like it always will be because, like we've all been saying, there's just so many great memorable moments in the game, great music, great graphics, and like I still think it is one of those games that still holds up and I would like to like I was saying earlier, I do would like to do another playthrough eventually. It's just, there's just other stuff I want to like kind of go through there first, but it is a game that yeah, I love it. I always will. And yeah, and it's gonna be cool reading about other people that also love it too. And and I also do want to like would like to hear more people that play it for like the very first time that never did, because I know there's a lot of people out there that did play a lot of Zelda games, but they just never played this one because they just didn't have a Super Nintendo or any of the other consoles there. So yeah, I like reading that type of stuff because it's interesting to get a fresh take on that.
Awesome. I love to hear that. And I'm looking forward to hearing from others as well and putting it kind of in conversation. You're definitely the most positive person on this game I've had on so far. So I will say that.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Um, okay, I don't have a very creative, crazy way to end. So I will ask you, BioPhoenix, as Link, how would you close off this interview?
Ooh,
Okay, why ooh?
that's the sound, because that's like the sound that he makes when he gets hit in this game. And at least in the Super Nintendo version, not the GBA one where they just use the Ocarina of Time sounds.
Right. Ooh. Excellent.
Yeah, because isn't that like what he sounds like when you get hit in the Super Nintendo game? It's like ooh,
Yeah,
ooh,
yeah, it's like
but
ooh.
it's like I don't know, like
Dude. Awesome.